everyone. Welcome to the next session of our Day 1 and Beyond Did You Know series. In this webinar series, we focus on new features and enhancements of Oracle Cloud Infrastructure and discuss how these solutions empower businesses to achieve greater efficiency, security, and scalability. Whether you are a seasoned OCI user or just starting your cloud journey, you are in the right place to explore what's new. My name is Renu Bhatt, Program Lead for the Customer Enablement team here at Oracle. And joining us today for this webinar are Anant Ahluwalia, Senior Cloud Engineer, and Brian Hoopman, Senior Manager, Cloud Engineering here at Oracle. Let's hop over to our great presenters now. Ananta, please take over.
Thanks, Renu. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining. Today's topic on resiliency is something that both Brian and I are passionate about, and we help customers plan for it every day of the week. So we hope today's session will be helpful to you. So really the Change Healthcare hack and AT&T data breach have refocused the conversation on the virtue of preventive action versus a reactive approach to business continuity and resiliency plans. And companies are taking a closer look at reducing the financial risk surrounding unplanned events that might disrupt their ability to keep the lights on. So we would love to hear from you where you are in your journey to achieving resiliency. Now, planning for disaster recovery, I like to say, is kind of like buying insurance, right? People want to pay the lowest annual premium, and then when disaster strikes, they panic and wish that they had bought the right type and amount of coverage. Be it a small to medium-sized business that's seeking financial risk reduction, or a Fortune 500 global corporation that's focused on reliability, they all need a sound business continuity and resiliency strategy so that if disaster strikes, they won't incur serious negative impacts, financial or otherwise. Now, many organizations are looking for a reliable and cost-effective DR solution that takes advantage of the on-demand provisioning and pay-as-you-go billing capabilities of the cloud. Today's talk discusses the cloud disaster recovery use case and how to utilize Oracle Cloud VMware Solution to successfully recover your VMware workloads to Oracle Cloud. So let's first take a look at what happens when DR comes calling, right? What's the impact of downtime? And the not so fun facts are that really outages can be caused by various factors, including hardware or software failures, human errors, malicious attacks, or natural disasters, and can have varying degrees of severity and impact to an organization. Downtime can be broadly categorized into planned downtime and unplanned downtime. What we have seen and industry analysts have looked at is that when you evaluate between SMBs to large enterprise organizations, the average cost of downtime on an hourly basis can be upwards of $350,000 per hour. If you think about the amount of time that it takes to recover, some organizations recover within hours and others take days. The average time it takes to recover is about 87 hours. No organization is immune to outages, with 9 out of 10 customers experiencing them in the last 24 months. There is significant financial impact of outages, and the average cost of unplanned data center outage or disaster is around $10 million.
Hey, Anantha, everyone is at a different place in their DR journey. Can you walk us through some of the core concepts when we start talking? What is disaster recovery?
Yeah, sure. So let's look at the disaster recovery basics, right? Now, most of today's businesses are inclined to deploy DR plans to ensure a certain level of business continuity that merely depends on how critical the application is to the business. DR plans are usually in place to avoid single point of failure and prevent data loss, which in turn reduces downtime cost and revenue impact for planned and unplanned outage. Sometimes enterprises are mandated to enable data protection for compliance and regulatory purposes. Then no matter what the reason is, a good DR plan has to be designed to meet the business continuity requirements. Now, RTO and RPO are the two metrics that define the DR plan. The RTO is the target time required to restore your application functionality after a disaster happens. It's the time taken for an application to recover from a failure or to fail over and to become fully available to process user requests. The goal is to measure how quickly you must recover from a disaster. Typically, the more critical the applications, the lower the RTO. The lower the RTO, the higher the availability of the application, and the higher the cost of the DR solution. The RPO is the acceptable time frame of lost data that your applications can tolerate. So it's the amount of data loss that a business could tolerate in case of a disaster. The lower the RPO, the lower the amount of data loss, and the higher the cost of the DR solution. Generally speaking, we have 3 different DR options that are basically being determined by the RTO RPO requirements. For businesses that can tolerate up to 24 hours of downtime and data loss, a simple backup and restore DR plan could be sufficient. Backup and restore is when a point-in-time backup is used to restore the application in place. For lower RPO, up to 12 hours, and RTO, up to 4 hours, a cold standby plan could be sufficient. This is when the same point-in-time backup or snapshot is used as a basis to programmatically reinstantiate the application in the DR site. For RTO of less than 2 hours and RPO of less than 15 minutes, a more stringent DR plan, that is a warm standby plan, should be considered. This is where a 1:1 or scaled down DR environment is replicated and is continuously refreshed and ready to take over in the DR site, in this case, Oracle Cloud.
Perfect. Great breakdown of the building blocks for us and good background for us to establish today's conversation. Can you walk us through how organizations have traditionally designed for disaster recovery and maybe what some of the gaps might be?
Yeah, so let's take a look at the traditional DR design, right? So when we talk about traditional DR, we're often talking about a secondary data center, be it in your own office or data center, or perhaps inside of a colo facility. Often these are carbon copies of the production environment or a slightly less performant variant of your production environment. To complicate matters, often these are cold capacity or maybe warm in certain instances, but there's a large capital expenditure to have the hardware and software deployed and available should you ever have to declare a disaster. Unfortunately for the enterprise, you don't have the luxury of running down the street to Best Buy and buying a server, quickly putting it in the data center when you need it, or returning it before your 30 days are up as you're failed back to your production environment. So it makes sense for most companies to look into Pilot Light DR. So let's start with defining what we mean by Pilot Light DR. Brian, can we unpack what we mean by Pilot Light DR and why is it important to customers?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Nanta. I mean, the architecture and requirements to facilitate a disaster recovery environment have really fundamentally shifted with the proliferation of cloud. And I want to take a second and perhaps re-emphasize that the traditional disaster recovery environment, like you just mentioned, which has been the typical design for companies for the last years or really the last handful of decades, while perfectly capable, may not be the end-all be-all solution in today's world of hybrid and public cloud. I mean, it's for this exact reason that the concept of a pilot-like disaster recovery environment comes into the light, and in particular, how Oracle and our cloud can make it a reality for you. I mean, with this design, you start with that minimum viable cluster, which can be as small as a 3-node environment and have just enough storage attached to it to act as a replication target for your primary data center to house basically all your virtual machines. With the pre-configured cluster, you can have things like your networking and your firewalls all set up in advance, really giving you the ability to have compute and storage capacity available to you that you can actively run some workloads if you so choose and take advantage of those resources dedicated to you while that environment's running. And because we're leveraging the cloud and you have elastic capabilities, should you ever declare a disaster and need to recover the infrastructure, you could add additional hosts to your cluster to support the capacity requirements in an on-demand model. really giving you the ability to add them and remove them and the associated costs when you no longer require them. So, Anantha, can you elaborate on a few different DR scenarios that our audience might be faced with today?
Yeah, sure. So let's look at the different DR scenarios, and one of these might apply to you, where you currently have DR, but it's too expensive, and you want to reduce costs by moving to a serverless DR in the cloud that leverages the on-demand provisioning and pay-as-you-go billing capability of the cloud while enabling fast DR site setup and teardown. Or you may have production on premises, you don't have any DR and you want to implement it. You can't afford on-premises DR with the OpEx expenditures required to maintain duplicate data centers, but you need an off-site backup and recovery capability for business continuity and compliance purposes. Ultimately, you need a low OpEx DR site with minimal to zero active management. The third scenario is you have production in the cloud and you want to implement DR. You kind of need an all-in the cloud DR solution because traditional DR solutions do not work in the cloud, or you yourself have moved to the cloud. So once a strategic choice is made to move production to the cloud, there are really only two options for DR: region to region within the same cloud, or cloud to cloud across two platforms as the source and target. So Brian, looking at these scenarios, what are some of the things that Oracle is doing to address them?
I think you nailed it with the different scenarios that most folks probably align themselves with. And I'll associate that with the Goldilocks story, which I think everyone here can associate and familiar with. Too hot, right? Too hot, it's too expensive and becoming a burden on the bottom line, or perhaps too expensive to provide the full scale that you require. Too cold on the flip side, maybe you lack it today because maybe it's too prohibitive to build out, and perhaps one of the things struck from the budget each and every year. This is where Oracle is helping provide that just right analogy for our VMware-based clients with the blend of the Pilot Light model I talked about a few minutes ago, and our Oracle Cloud VMware Solution, or OCVS for short, to build that right for you DR model with just enough capacity and all the storage in a highly scalable model that grows with you when you need it. With how we've designed OCVS and the offerings available to customers, you really can unlock cloud economics and scale. We have some of the largest as well as the smallest host options in the cloud, which gives you that flexibility of building precisely what you need for your Pilot Light environment. And with the Pilot Light DR, this is where something small can really unlock DR capabilities that may have been prohibitive for your organization in the past. If you need that ultra small, we can build a cluster as tiny as 36 cores. Really just enough compute to do what I mentioned before, to have the environment pre-configured, and if and when you need more capacity, it takes us about 20 up to 30 minutes to add an additional host, and you can add multiple ones concurrently. You don't have to do them sequential. So if you need 10 real quick, add them all right away. And to add more compute capacity and basically give you an environment you can recover and power on all your virtual machines. And imagine if I told you that for less than $7,000 a month and the cost of storage, you can have that VMware Pilot Light cluster in the cloud. Then if you need to test DR or declare it, you could add those additional hosts by the hour, and we do have a minimum commitment of 8 hours. But use that and then scale it out and then back in as you need to. I mean, use the cloud when you need it versus having to own the entire asset for perpetuity. And with over 48 different cloud regions and consistent global pricing, you can build this as close to, or perhaps as far away from, your primary data center with complete cost predictability and transparency.
Wow, Brian, so 20 to 30 minutes sounds impressive. What are the most common challenges that customers face when moving VMware workloads, whether it's DR or otherwise, to the cloud? And how is Oracle solving for that?
Hey, perfect question. Oftentimes it comes down to some level of concessions that have to be made, and I bucketize them into the three categories you see here on the screen: control, security, and predictability. On premises, you have full control of the environment. This means, full admin access, root level control, and the ability to control software lifecycle and patch versions. When adopting a VMware-based solution in the cloud, oftentimes it's an environment managed by a cloud provider, And as such, there's limitations given to the consumer, and you have to conform to how they deliver a VMware environment versus the other way around. With OCVS, we built the platform to not only look, feel, but touch just like an on-premises environment with no restrictions on how you, the customer, can operate it. You have full administrative access across the entire VMware stack, down to root level access of the hosts. So things as simple or perhaps as challenging in the cloud as installing a custom VIB, you absolutely have the ability that you could do so. If you need the cloud to be running the exact same version of vSphere, be it 7 or 8, you have that as well. This becomes extremely critical in the DR environment because you're going to want to have the same versions of vSphere running in the cloud as your primary data center to ensure that there's zero compatibility issues and ensuring success when you need to fail over. The last thing you want during a DR event is to find out that an application that you certify and know is working on premises suddenly doesn't work in the cloud because you're at a different version of software, or worse, you get locked into the cloud because it's on a newer release and you don't have the ability to fail back to your primary data center. When we think about security, it's who has access to your data. That too is something that is entirely locked down to you with full end-to-end encryption, and you own the encryption keys and determine who has access into your tenancy. With OCVS, you are 100% in the driver's seat of your cloud data center, just as you are on premises without having to make any of those compromises. This also empowers you to be able to ensure your DR environment in the cloud abides by your company's compliance policies, from regulatory compliances all the way down to internal corporate requirements. You're able to build and enforce them in the cloud identically to how you built them on premises. And then lastly, that predictability factor. When you own your own data center on premises, you're essentially calling all the shots. You've built your standard operating procedures and have complete transparency as to how you've built and managed the estate, from cost through end-to-end management. When you look at cloud, there's too often some level of variability and unknowns that now have to be accounted for. With OCI, those walls are essentially broken down. You don't have to change your standard operating procedures due to the way we've developed the service. There's straightforward, universally consistent pricing that you can bank on, and no need to change how you manage your VMware estate. It's really a win-win-win across the board.
Yeah, so we have an identical experience with how we deliver VMware in the cloud, and we have cost-effective ways of enabling DR. Brian, what's the impact of not doing this?
Yeah, I mean, outages can come from anywhere, and its impact can be trivial or it can be absolutely devastating depending upon severity. So just to touch on a few of these examples, also personnel in our operations. Over on the right, on the other side, we have Delta, and Delta experienced a power outage at their operations center in Atlanta, crippling their systems needed to both book in passengers as well as flying jets. And this was out for roughly about 5 hours, and this led to over 1,000 flight cancellations and grounded another 1,000 flights for days as they worked to restore systems. 5 hours worth of outage equated to over $150 million in disruptions for them. I mean, it's really examples like this that reinforce that disruptions can really be from anything, and having a plan in place is critical to restoring services and mitigating risks. Managing data centers isn't necessarily easy, and the cloud can introduce solutions to challenges that are fundamentally difficult to execute effectively in a fully on-premises world. Again, with our focus on disaster recovery, Oracle and OCVS offers the ability to deliver a business-critical service in a highly scalable and economic package without having to compromise on security, manageability, and the scale to meet the needs of your business. I mean, we're really helping people unlock those capabilities.
Yeah, Brian, those examples are chilling. How is Oracle working across the ecosystem to deliver a more effective pilot like DR?
Sure. So, I mean, earlier you talked about backup and restore as options, as well as RPOs and RTOs, and all of those are key components that you think about in regards to resiliency being delivered from the cloud. You can bring your own backup service and integrate it with OCI and OCVS and use that as an initial step in for protection. And then native to our VMware service is replication to help with achieving the targeted RPOs, as well as a robust partner ecosystem of solutions that have been helping customers for years with both replication as well as orchestration to help reduce both those RPOs and the RTOs based on the business needs. So some of the examples being VMware by Broadcom's own Site Recovery Manager solution, or others like Veeam and Zerto. These are just a few of the different industry solutions helping customers achieve a best-in-class DR solution and can fully integrate with OCI and OCVS. This gives you the ability to not only schedule test scenarios to ensure that your DR solution works should you need it, but also with the ability to rapidly restore services and automate the process to ensure that consistency and reduce the time that it takes to restore services and scale the environment.
Yeah, Brian, so seeing is believing, right? Can you show us how easy it is to stand up OCVS and walk us through some of the features to deploy a pilot-light DR environment for VMware workloads?
Absolutely. So I'm going to switch on over and go into a live environment. And so for anybody that's familiar or not familiar with OCI, it's really cloud.oracle.com is our landing zone to manage and operate our tenancies. And so I've logged in. I happen to be connected to our US West region, so one of our regions in the US. And I'm going to establish and set up a quick SDDC or software-defined data center and show you how easy it is in a few clicks and a wizard-driven approach to deploy a VMware-based solution to establish and build on and create your DR pilot light. So from the hamburger icon, I clicked in the upper left hand, I click on hybrid, and you'll see VMware solution is right here available for consumption. Inside here, it's as simple as taking that wizard-driven approach that I just mentioned before, create the SDDC, and we have a few different fields that we need to populate. We need to provide a name, so I'm going to just do demo for today, select the compartment, and I talked about version control, vSphere 7, vSphere 8. You want to make sure you're at an identical version on premises to the cloud. It's beneficial. It makes things easy. You have choice. You have options here. So I'm going to go with an older version. I'm going to go with vSphere 7 for today's example. HCX is included in our service. It's usually predominantly used for migration services. I'm not going to dig into it for today's examples. And then we talked about security and encryption. You are able to provide your own keys and direct access. I'm just going to fake it for right now, but I'm going to go ahead and take us through, assuming I put in a real SSH key. From here, we define our cluster. So we can have up to 6 clusters inside an SDDC. Everything starts with a single cluster. I'm going to have cluster demo as our name. We can choose availability domains. So depending upon what region you are globally, we have 1 to 3 availability domains with 3 fault domains inside them globally, giving the redundancy and security that you need to make sure that there's resiliency in your environment. Again, perfect when we talk about DR in today's topics. So I'm going to keep it as availability domain 1. I'm going to do a multi-host. I mentioned production environments. We need 3 hosts to start. So I'm going to start with 3 hosts. Environments can scale dependent upon host all the way up to 64. And then I'm going to choose the shape. Now, I said earlier, we have the densest as well as the smallest kind of iron in the industry. So we have both Intel and AMD as options. You know, AMD can go up to 128 cores, Intel up to 64, but I want small. I want pilot light DR small. So I'm going to take our standard shape, select this, and with our standard shapes, we can configure multiple different core options. So that example I gave of we can do 36 cores, ultra small, exactly what I'm going to build. For security focused folks, if you're on an Intel shape, we can enable shielded instances. I'm not going to worry about it for today. And then we pick our intervals. So do I want to do an hourly commit? We can drive out costs, 50% savings comparative to an hourly rate with a 3-year commit. So I'm going to select 3 years for right now, accept the pricing interval, and move to the next screen. From here, we select a virtual cloud network. I have one pre-established, so I'm going to select that CIDR range, and I need to provide a range for the hosts themselves inside this cluster. So I'm going to pick something within range of what's above. I'll do a /21. It does a quick checks and balances, make sure that range is available. It passes. In this environment, I can scale up to 32 hosts with that CIDR range. I'm going to go ahead and click next. Now we talked about storage. This is where we can add just enough storage for what we need. We can call this block demo. I'm just going to leave the default settings for right now, but I can add all the way up to a petabyte of storage into this individual cluster if needed. Again, size and provision enough storage to land all your virtual machines that you need. And I talked about encryption. You can own the end-to-end encryption. You can use Oracle provided keys, or if you want, you can take customer managed keys and provide your own. I'm just going to use our default ones for now. We click submit. Next. We have notifications capabilities to give you more information around the physical infrastructure environments to give you visibility behind the scenes. And then from here, it's just a recap. And I'm not going to hit submit for right now, but that's it. This is really the wizard-driven approach. Within 5 minutes, I've kind of walked through the different options and scenarios that are available to quickly provision that environment. And it takes about 2.5 hours or so, and it's fully up and running, ready for you to start replicating and protecting your workloads with.
This is great, Brian. What are the key takeaways and next steps that our customers can take toward greater resiliency?
Yeah, I mean, my first thing would be take a step back and think. We covered a lot of good topics today, but do you have a DR strategy today? And is it sufficient for your current state environment? You know, we're here, we're available. We have our email addresses up on the screen as well, that we're more than happy. As Anantha had said early on, we have this conversation with many, many customers each and every day, and we're here to help customers build a better mousetrap and provide better capabilities and leverage what the cloud can really bring to market to assist you with your DR solutions. Even on the screen, we have a few different QR codes that you could snap or even take those links, learn a little bit more specifically around Oracle Cloud VMware Solution itself. And then we even have a series of masterclass recordings that are available from prior in the year that you can learn a little bit more around the services and specific use cases on how customers are best taking advantage of it.
Thanks, Brian. And thanks everyone for joining. We hope this webinar helps you move forward in your journey to achieving resiliency. And if you would like to learn more, have any questions, please reach out to Brian or I. And thank you again for your time.
And then also we have here a few more links will be available in copy for everyone who has attended, that you can get additional from our Day 1 and Beyond series, additional insights and information around how OCI is helping deliver cloud-based solutions for customers today.
Thanks a lot, Nanda and Brian, for an awesome session and for sharing info on how organizations can brace themselves for unplanned outages and disasters to reduce downtime and save data. I hope everyone learned something new today. Our next webinar will be on Monday, June 24th, where you'll learn how Oracle VM can significantly reduce resources required by a Java application and boost application performance. So please do not forget to go to the Day 1 and Beyond page and register for the next session if you're interested. I recommend that you bookmark the Day 1 and Beyond page and check frequently for new sessions on trending topics. But thanks again for joining us. See you all next time. Have a great day, everyone.